All right, welcome. We are live here on Finance Friday. I am Jerry Fetta, owner, founder, CEO of Wealth DynamX, coming to you with a live course every Friday for like the last 4 years. We've been doing these. It's been a long time. But I want to talk tonight about investing. Okay, one of my favorite topics. I actually want to talk about my top 6 favorite investments right now. Good catch. Avery asked if we're recording. We are recording. Awesome. Thank you, Avery. We're talking about investing. Now, before I dive into this topic, I want to give you guys a little bit of a backstory on, again, my background with investing. I was a retail mainstream financial advisor for almost half my career, doing, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, retirement plans. And I worked in a very high capacity. I managed millions of dollars, worked with Dave Ramsey, owned my own firm at one point. And so that's the area that I came from. And so that's kind of the background and knowledge that I had. It was a very, I would say, product-oriented, product-focused version of investing. Okay. Now, in today's context, I don't believe that that's what investing is. I don't think that investing is buying a product or a service. I think that that's something entirely different. And I want to talk about what investing is and give you guys some specific examples of investments that I would be looking at right now, investments that I am looking at right now, and also the context of like, when would you do these? Right? How do you do them? What is involved? How do you get started? Those types of things. So that way, as you're becoming, closer and closer to being an investor, maybe you are one now, you're like, okay, cool. I have this understanding. Okay. So we'll talk about that tonight. Same things I always cover every week. If there's something that does not make sense, I want you to ask. Okay. So if I go over a word or a concept or even just a mathematical, this is how an investment works. And you're like, wait, I didn't get that. I want you to ask me in the comments. We'll actually go live and answer your questions. I am going to do things a little different tonight. Usually we ask questions at the end. And I realized for me as an audience member, whenever I've been to a conference or an event, the most frustrating thing is when I have a question, but I don't hear the answer for like 45 minutes until the dude's done talking. So if you have a question, what we'll do is intermittently, we'll take breaks for questions and we'll go live. We'll answer questions, kind of like the old AM talk radio stations, right? And so we'll go live and answer questions throughout. Again, like think about, why am I here? What is my purpose? If I'm not yet an investor, when am I going to be one? And why would I need this information? How am I going to use it? Right? How am I going to apply this? We talk about this all the time. And then we also talk about the mindset of being a producer, not just a consumer. Okay, it's easy to be on here and listen and learn and receive information. But if I never do anything with it, that's actually not learning. That's actually not education. For me, education is evidenced by doing. If I can't do something with the information after I got it and I don't know how to apply it, I didn't actually learn something, right? So I want you thinking about that. And that actually is a great way to come up with questions. Think about like, how would I work this out in my own life? And right now you've got me live for 60 minutes for me to help you. Okay. So I want you to think about that. And then if your question is delicate, I won't go live. If you want me to leave it anonymous, you can just send me a direct message in the chat. I'll answer it and we won't tell anyone who you are. We'll just answer your question as well. So guys, without further ado, I want to dive into our topic, the top 6 investments for 2022. Okay. Now I picked the top 6 because I wanted to look at something that all of these had in common. Okay. And these are all things that are relatively low risk. You're investing in a real tangible asset, right? And you're investing for income is the main thing that we're looking at. We're looking at how do we get income, whether that's active or passive. Like some of them are going to have varying degrees, right? Ultimately, our goal is passive income that exceeds savings, expenses, and taxes. That's the definition of financial independence. Okay. So we've talked about on prior courses, investing means to clothe your capital. Okay. Just like I'm wearing clothing right now, right? So I'm clothing my capital. I'm putting something on my money or putting my money into something. And that's the clothing that my money now wears. Okay. And that clothing has to be something that I like. I'm going to write these on the board just so that we cover them. It has to be something that I like, has to be something that I understand, has to be something that fits me, has to be something that fits my goals. Okay. It has to be something that is vital. And it has to be something that is fairly priced. I'm not going to overpay for an investment. Okay. And we talk about these a lot, but this is how I would literally pick out my clothing. I would pick out things that I like to wear. I would pick out things that I understand. I would pick out things that fit me. I'm going to be the one wearing them after all. I would pick out things that, fit the goals, the things I'm going to use it for. Right. I would pick out things that are vital first. I'm not going to go to work with my shoes on, but no underwear. Right. Or maybe I will, depends how risky I'm feeling that day. Right. Or overpriced. I'm not going to overpay for something. If it's, just clothing, it's not something that I'm going to, overpay for. It has to serve a function. It provides a utility, and I can put a certain price or a certain value on that utility. We have a comment here, and not a fad. Avery says not a fad. Yeah. And I would say the fad thing fits into vital, right? Underwear is not a fad, right? Socks are not a fad. Shoes are not a fad. Everyone will always need to wear them. Fanny packs, not vital. And usually if it's not vital, that puts it in that category of a fad, right? So we don't want to invest in fads. Avery makes a good point there. And a fad would be something that is popular for a period because of, social support or, fear of missing out or social media hype. And it's there for whatever period of time it's there for, and then it's gone, right? That's what a fad would be. And fads all have commonalities as well. We kind of talked about that last week. So these are all things I would be looking at. Okay. Now check this out. From the very top, I got to look at what do I like and what do I understand. These things go hand in hand. You could switch them. They're almost interchangeable because I'm going to have a hard time liking things that I don't understand. Who's ever done something they didn't know how to do before? The very first time you did it, you probably didn't like it, right? Whether it was wealth dynamics and you're like, man, this finance stuff, I don't understand this. I don't know if I like this, or, a new sport or a new skill, or maybe if you're in sales, the first time you ever made a phone call to a prospect. Those are things that when we don't understand them, we're usually bad at them. We don't have good results. We have a level of uncertainty. And so that also reflects in how much we like the thing. Okay. Bad at something, don't understand something. I usually don't like it. So when I look at investing, this is actually going to be chief is like, what do I actually understand? Okay. Good to see everyone on Facebook too. Good to see you, Brad, Justin, Andrew, Sean, everybody. Good to see you guys. Thanks for tuning in. So again, I have to think about what do I understand? And if I'm just starting out, most of us don't understand finances by osmosis. Okay. We're not going to look at something and be like, okay, I understand this just because I looked at it. It's not that way. We have to spend time learning and educating ourselves on that. Okay. So like and understand go hand in hand. Now check this out. If I am new to finances, if I'm not earning more than I spend, if I'm not on a forced savings plan, if I have consumer debt, if I'm not properly protected, if I don't understand the differences between money and currency, those are all indicators that my level of understanding with finances is subpar. And that's not a diss. I started there too. Okay. Most people start there. We're not born financial geniuses. We have to learn this stuff. So when I start looking at investing and I don't understand the basics, why would I jump into a tool? Because what an investment does, guys, an investment produces passive income. Okay. Or it multiplies money, right? We could say it multiplies our money. It's the scale factor. It's like taking your income, your active income, and turning it into like a franchise, right? Where it's like, okay, this thing does its own deal. I don't have to be there anymore. So it's multiplying dollars and currency. But if I don't understand the basics of dollars and currency, I'm multiplying a thing that I don't understand. Okay, like take one thing that's confusing. Now add a whole bunch of them that I don't actually even control anymore. They just pop out by themselves, like little rabbits, right? That's going to be more confusing than where I was starting at, because now I have more of the thing I don't understand, even though it's good that it's being produced, even though it's producing passively, even though it's multiplying. Do you see that? So the understanding piece is vital. So the very first thing that I look at and invest in, this is where I'd recommend everyone starts. Number one, numero uno, is yourself. Okay. This is going to sound cliche, and you're going to have to fight the urge not to be like, oh, I saw that on every Instagram motivational post ever about investing in yourself. I already know this. Okay. Well, here's the deal, guys. The focus should be on this blueprint to financial freedom. One of the first big milestones is being able to save 40% of my gross income. Okay. 40% of my gross income. So if I'm saving 40% of my gross income, that means I'm earning enough. And I'm also, a high enough level of understanding with my finances where I can keep that. And it's not just what I keep, it's where I keep it as well. right? So I'm saving 40% of my gross income. The barrier for most people on that is not how much they spend. Okay. The barrier for most people on that is the amount of income that they earn. Okay. In my opinion, in most areas, you need to be doing about $10,000 a month in order to realistically save 40% of your income. Okay, think about that. 10,000 a month. I pull 4 off the top. I'm left with 6. I've got to pay taxes. That's probably $1,500, right? Maybe 2,000. So I'm left with, like 3,500, 4,000 ish left in my budget. Okay. And that's what I can live on. So now I'm looking at, okay, I got to pay my mortgage, my debts. I've got to buy groceries. I've got to pay the car. I've got to do gas. I've got to do all this other stuff. 4,000 or 5,000 a month kind of does that, but that's borderline. Okay. Some of us that doesn't even cover that, right? So it's at least $10,000 a month. At least it might be 15, it might be 20. So if I'm not bringing this in, and if I'm an entrepreneur, this doesn't mean sell 10,000, it means profit. 10,000 a month in profit. If I'm a business owner or an entrepreneur, it's what I keep before I pay my taxes. So saying I've got a 6-figure business, what I realized there is I had a 6-figure business that was paying me $30,000 a year, which was what I was making when I did pizza. And it was a lot more work, right? Pizza, I could check in, do my thing, make my 30 grand and leave. There was nothing else to it, right? So we've got to look at how do we increase our incomes first. And that's actually a representation of investing in myself. Okay. Now, investing in myself doesn't just mean we go to a conference and we get all excited and then we come home and then we go back to doing whatever we did before we went there, right? Investing in ourselves doesn't just mean reading a book so that we can tell all of our friends in the motivational Facebook group how many books we read this year and not applying any of the information. Okay. Investing in ourselves doesn't mean we hire a coach just to have someone to talk to. Investing in ourselves means that we're literally taking, either effort or capital, whether we have one or the other or both, and we're putting that into things that are going to improve our skills and our abilities. Okay. And those have to translate into things that produce income at a very basic level. Like everyone should invest in their ability to communicate and understand human behavior. That helps everywhere, whether you're an employee, entrepreneur, salesperson, business owner, you do a product, you do a service, whatever it might be, because everything is people, right? If I understand how people think, how they communicate, how to communicate with them, how to analyze that and win with people, that helps me everywhere. And that's something that I don't see taught very often. Okay. Not any gimmicks either, like, mimic their body language or repeat the words none of that stuff. I'm saying actually understand what's going on up here and what's going on here with people. Because if I can understand what's going on here with people and here with people, A, I understand better myself for myself. I can be a better human being on my own. And then B, I can have interrelations with people that are much better and much smoother, much more successful, which results in me being able to increase my income. Okay, because if I don't do that, what does income actually come from? Income is the triangle of income. We have knowledge, we have value, and we have exchange. If I don't understand people and emotions and communications, right, how am I going to know what knowledge should I get that is valuable to other people when I don't understand other people, AKA my end user? Right? I've got to know this stuff. And then not only that, let's say I get the knowledge and it is valuable, but I don't know how to exchange with someone. I don't know how to have a conversation and get us to work together, right? The exchange can't happen. So that's something I've got to invest in. And to the degree that my income is not there, I would say I need to invest in this. Okay. Even before I invest in sales training and marketing and motivational stuff and coaches to help me block out my barriers, the number one barrier that I have is the fact that I live in a world full of humans and I don't understand them and I don't know how to communicate with them. Okay. And communicating with them is not this. It's not scrolling through a Facebook feed. That's a platform you might communicate with, right? But at the end of the day, there's other people, real human beings with real lives and real problems and real conversations and emotions and different things going on that I'm interacting with. And that's the part of it that I need to understand, whether it's a social media interaction or a Zoom call, or I'm meeting someone face-to-face or whatever it might be. Okay. So invest in yourself. Now, with investing in myself, one of the things that is easy to fall into is to not utilize what I'm learning. Okay. And what I mean by that is investing in myself requires utilization, especially if it's a course or a class or whatever. We've talked about this before, right? It's no different than if I buy real estate as an investment, but then I don't occupy it. I don't put tenants or people that are going to maybe pay mortgage payments or interest payments in the building. Okay, I have the potential for that to help me. I have the potential for that to yield income, but if I'm not utilizing it and actually making it happen, nothing's going to pan out. It's just going to be something I paid for that didn't work. Right? Same thing with the book, the course, the coach, the event. If I don't utilize it, it doesn't matter. You can spend $50,000 on personal development and be like, man, that was a baller move. That's great. That's cool. But if you don't utilize that, that doesn't help you one bit. Right? So this is one thing that I want to have as our first point. Now, in the sense of like what we're about to do here is we're going to get into a bunch of other investments. So one of the other areas needs to be finances. Okay. Investing in my financial knowledge. Okay, guys, the number one thing that I think that we're under-equipped in life is finances. We go to school how many years and we don't get taught about money? Okay, the reason why we're going to school is so that we can get a job, so that we can earn what? Money, dollars. So we don't learn about them once, not even once. We don't learn about, taxes, like the thing that when we get the job, if we don't pay for it, we're going to go to prison. And we don't learn about that. We don't learn about debt, the thing that we're supposed to borrow to get the student loan so that we can go to more schools, so that we can get the better job. And we don't learn about that. Right. So we have to take responsibility for it, because there's an element of it that's like, it's like true. It's like when someone is, in a position where they don't know any better, you almost have to be like, man, they didn't know any better. And it's easy to fall into that. I never learned. I never was taught. I didn't grow up with this stuff. Right. But at the end of the day, that doesn't help. To have sympathy on myself and pity on myself and give myself the excuse that I didn't know, even if it's true, it does not produce a statistic for me. It doesn't help me improve my finances. So I have to take responsibility for, I never was taught any of this stuff. So I have to learn it myself. I've got to bootstrap this, and I've got to invest time, money, right? Behavior, all of this discipline into financial education so that we can start to dive into some of the other things. Okay. So this is the first investment. Now, when would you do this? You would do this always and forever. Okay, this is never going to stop. And this is the part that I think, you have to be able to discern what's actually a good investment with this, just like with anything, because there's this mindset of like any personal development is good. Any book, any course is good. That wouldn't be true. Right? Like think about it. Any investment isn't good. You wouldn't be like any investment is a good opportunity just by nature of the fact that it's an investment. No, that's not a true statement. Just like any food isn't good. Just because you can eat it doesn't mean you should. So any course, any book, any event you go to isn't good just because of what it is. You have to discern, is this going to help me? Okay, and you have to be really picky about it. You almost have to be a little bit skeptical, not to the point where you're not open-minded, right? But to the point where you're like, okay, does this actually do the thing I need it to do? Critical thinking, you have to analyze it just like you would an investment deal. Okay. And I think this is where people go sour on some of this investing in themselves, is they don't do that. They get excited. I remember the first time I started buying books and courses, you just kind of buy everything and you're like, man, this is great. And then you realize I spent money and I don't know what's happening. And I don't know if there's any results coming from this. And you kind of get discouraged and don't want to do it again. And then you stop investing in yourself because it didn't work last time. Okay. And sometimes it's because you didn't work last time. And sometimes it's because it was the wrong thing. Right. So I've got to be able to discern. Now, the next thing that I would invest in is consumer debt freedom. Okay. Now, hear me out. This is an investment. Why? It's not sexy. It's not exciting. I'm not about to go Dave Ramsey on you either. But guess what? This requires principal meaning the money that I'm going to put into it. Okay. I earn interest by saving it, by not having to pay it. So that's a factor of an investment. And it also pays income. The payment that I would have had to make if I had the debt, I get back, which is a form of income. Okay. And guess what? Unlike any other investment, this has absolutely no risk. Nothing can go wrong with me getting rid of consumer debt. Right now, I'm not just going to take cash and pay it off. This is where I'm going to put money into my sacred account. I'm going to borrow against it. I'm going to do the debt buyout strategy. There's a right way to do this. Just like there's a right way to buy real estate. There's a right way to buy gold. There's a right way to buy everything. Okay. So there's a right way to buy your debt back. Okay. So I have to look at this too and realize that this is an investment. And I hit this one second because most of us at some point start out with debt. I had consumer debt, and I'm not talking about investment debt or business debt or anything else other than consumer debt. Debt where I bought a product or a service or a consumable where I just use it and it doesn't make me money at all. Right? So these are things that I'd look at and say, okay, well, I'm actually going to invest in that. There's this mindset that this isn't investing, and that this is actually something to be looked down upon or feel bad that you're having to do this before you can invest. And I'll go over this really quickly. I've talked about this before. Guys, if I have $50,000 and I've got $50,000 in debt, my payment on this is probably going to be about $1,000 a month. Let's say this is credit cards. 2% of the balance is about $1,000 a month, right? So I can take, and let's say this is, on a credit card, for example, this is probably 15% interest rate. That's kind of average and fair. So my rate of return by paying this off is at least 15%. And my passive income or my cash flow is $1,000 a month, right? If I take this same 50 grand and I put this into a private lending deal that's paying me 12%, okay, that only equals $500 a month. Which is more, 15 or 12? 15 all day. Okay, which is more, 1,000 or 500? 1,000 all day. Which one is risk-free? The debt. The real estate, sure, I can say there's collateral and that there's security backing it. That doesn't mean it's risk-free. It still has risk. Nothing is guaranteed, right? So with the debt, I know for a fact that's risk-free. Nothing can happen bad by getting rid of that. Again, it actually helps me with my credit and a bunch of other things as well, right? So this is the second thing that I'd be doing. And this is something I would do before I invest in anything else other than myself. So I'm investing in myself first, okay? And I'm doing that over and over and over. I'm getting my income all the way up to the point where I can save 40% of my gross, and I'm continuing to invest in myself, okay? As I'm doing that, as my income is going up, I'm doing this. I'm getting rid of my consumer debt. I'm using the sacred account to buy back my debt. Okay. So as I'm buying back my debt, I'm now freeing up income. I'm now getting more of my cash flow back, and I can start to do other strategies. Okay. Now, once I've done this, the next thing that I'm going to do, and this is actually one I haven't talked about this before. It's something I've looked into. It's something that's old as dirt. It's not something that's openly been available for people like you and I to be able to do. Okay. So this is called gold leasing. This is not the same thing as borrowing against my gold. So I'm going to explain this in a second. So buying gold, not an investment. It's a store of value. It's either a store of value or a speculation, depending on how you're treating it. It should be treated as a store of value. I'm not trying to buy low, sell high. I'm buying a real thing and hanging on to it, right? Now, in the gold market, and this has been around as old as gold has been around, there's this concept of leasing where, different companies, whether that be a jewelry store or a bullion dealer or anyone that distributes gold and silver to either a wholesaler or a consumer, similar to a car dealership, they have to get their inventory from somewhere. Okay. And so what they do is you have a business that needs gold, and you have a investor or a holder. We'll call this a owner. So I don't want to intermix the term with investing. This person owns gold. Okay. So this person needs gold. This person owns gold. Okay. The owner of the gold is going to lease his physical gold to the person that needs it, to the business owner. Okay. And this is based on any other loan. It would be based on credit worthiness, revenue. There would be collateral. There would be insurances in place to mitigate the risk of this business owner not paying the gold back, right? This business owner is going to pay an interest rate just like any other lease to the owner of the gold. So this guy, he now has the gold. He's able to fulfill his inventory or use it as collateral or whatever he might be doing with that gold. Okay. For that, he's going to pay an interest rate. That might be 2 or 3 or 4% interest. And it's usually a shorter term deal. You're looking at 1 year, 2 year, maybe 3 years. Okay. So you're usually going to be looking at about 2 to 4%, right? Now, at the end of this, let's say it's a 24-month term. At the end of the 24 months, this business owner then has to return the gold back to the owner, and the owner takes physical possession of it again. Okay. The beauty of this is that the gold still appreciates. So long-term, we're looking at with gold about an 8 to 10% since the 1970s, since we're allowed to own it again. That's the average annual look at the return. So if I'm making this, plus I'm also earning an annual yield of 2 to 4% on it, in a relatively low risk play, right? Like if you didn't know, when you go to a dealership and buy a car, they don't own the vehicle. They do the same thing. They lease it. They lease it till they can sell it to you. They just service the interest payments. And then when they're done, they have to pay either the principal, the vehicle back, which they do once they sell it, they pay the money back. Or if they don't get the vehicle sold, it comes off the lot, they send it back to whoever they're leasing it from. Okay. You would do the same thing here. Okay. So this is actually one of the things that I would say is a great way to look at investing. Questions on this. So Nano asks, what's the minimum? The minimum on this, on a gold lease, is usually about 10 ounces. Okay. You can also do this with silver. This is generally speaking going to be, I think, double. I think they do 20 ounces of silver, 10 ounces of gold in most cases. I've not done this with silver, and I've actually not done this yet with gold. So this is not something I'm going to tell you go do right now. I'm going to do this first. The concept has been around for a very long time. It's been institutional. It's not been open to consumers. So now it's open to consumers. It's something I'm going to try out, just like I do with everything. And then as it goes well, then I'll help you guys look at it as well, right? Or it could be terrible, and I'm like, hey guys, don't do this. This is a bad idea, right? But from the concept of this being a proven way to lease gold out, earn interest on it, have a real store of value in a low risk setting with something that's been around for a fairly long time, this is something to be looking at. A couple more questions. Let me go live really quick, actually, and answer some of these questions. We'll take a really quick break. Let's see. Questions. Nano's got a question on the gold leasing. I think I may have answered it, but let me bring Nano on live really quick. All right, Nano, go ahead and pop on here.
Hey, Jerry, what's going on, man?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing great, man. Thanks for asking. So, well, the question was, what is the minimum amount required to do this gold leasing? And then what you said it was 10 ounces of gold. And it was just more wondering at what point would the individual also be able to do that?
Yeah, so this can be done at phase 3, right? So phase 3, and it can kind of be done between phase 2 and 3. There's some timing on it. So the minimum is 10 ounces, right? But there's also like, what's the purpose of owning gold? Most of the time, we're either going to be borrowing against it for like a home equity line of credit and doing the HELOC strategy, or we might be trying to get our 70,000 so we can borrow against it for a deal. So this is not something that you could just buy and keep it in a lease for long term. Usually you're going to do that in the interim until you have whatever your target amount would be. Then you'd pull it out and you'd go do that with it instead. So you would kind of do this like maybe tail end of phase 2. If you're not doing the HELOC, you could get started with something like that sooner. If you are doing the HELOC, you're probably going to be looking at either not doing this till after, or if it's going to be a large down payment, you might look at, doing this first, doing the HELOC first, then doing the gold lease after. Awesome. So that was Nano's question. Let me see what other questions we have here. We have a question from Vanessa. Let me bring Vanessa on really quick. All right, we're live with Vanessa. How are you tonight?
Hey, Jerry, I'm doing well. Thank you.
Awesome.
Was whenever you're leasing the gold, you are actually giving them physical gold for them to use on jewelry or whatever, right? And so then they have to buy more gold back to give back to you, or how does that process work?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So in some cases, and it really depends on who you're leasing it to, what they're using it for. In some cases, after the term is done, they're going to send you back literally the gold you leased them, the exact, 1 ounce round or 10 ounce or whatever it was, right? In some instances, they're going to be sending you the same amount, but it's not literally the bar you gave them because, like Vanessa mentioned, they might have turned it into jewelry or sold it, right? Now, I personally don't care about that. An ounce of gold is an ounce of gold. I'm not sending them collector's item. Like I'm not sending them a unique, valuable piece or any of that piece back. I'm sending them 1 ounce. So whether they sold it and then later they're going to return 1 ounce and it's just a different bar, I'm fine with that. Or it might be the exact ounce that I loaned out to them or leased out to them because of the fact that they're not getting rid of it. They're maybe just holding it temporarily and then they're giving me my exact holding back. Excellent question. Let me bring on Avery. Avery has a question here really quick. All right, we've got Avery live. How are you tonight, Avery?
Doing well, Jerry. How about yourself?
I'm good. Thanks for asking. What's your question?
Yeah, so my question was, are there any particular risk involved with leasing your gold to a business owner or a business?
Definitely. Yep. So with anything, there's always going to be a risk. So one of the risks here obviously is counterparty risk, meaning the other party you're leasing to might have inherent risks with their own finances. And this is why you wouldn't just go up to a business at like a pawn shop or jewelry store and be like, I have gold. Can I lease it to you? Of course, they're going to say yes. You don't know if they're going to be good or not. So we're looking at a couple partners that underwrite this, and they work with specific, like some of the people they lease to are, it's funny, the very people we buy our gold from, right? Some of them are our bullion banks we work with. So we can kind of vet out some of that counterparty risk. Obviously, there's always default risk of, the leasor, the one that's actually borrowing or renting it, not having the capital pay back. The companies we're working with, they insure against that. So they carry an insurance policy, and if a default occurs, that insurance policy would kick in. Obviously, there's going to be probably waiting time and lags with that. It's an insurance payment that's being processed at that point. So, it doesn't get rid of the risk because there's still going to be time, but it does put some kind of a defense or protection against it. And then really, you've got to also look at interest rate risk, right? And that's more of an opportunity cost conversation. If I do gold leasing, and let's say I have enough to also maybe do a bullion loan instead, where I borrow against the gold and invest it, could I be earning more doing that? Right. And if I could, there's risk that if I'm locked into a lease, I don't have the same rate of return that I might have borrowing against my gold as collateral and doing a deal that way. So those are some of the risks involved. Everything does have risks. So just because it's gold, just because it's a tier 1 asset, the fact that we're leasing it brings another element into it. And this goes again back into financial understanding, right? So there's a level of education that comes with doing something like this as well. All right, very good questions. So I want to jump into our next one. So our next one here is going to be private lending. Okay, you guys are all familiar with this. We've talked about private lending before. And with private lending, this is where I have capital, I've got money to invest, and I loan that to an investor, a deal maker, someone that's buying a cash flowing, income producing investment, whether that be a mobile home park, or whether that be an apartment complex, or whether that be a storage facility or a subdivision or a single family home, whatever it might be, it pays an income, right? And I'm now the mortgage. I'm the underlying debt on whatever the property is that they're buying. Okay. So they're the one that is going to live in it or rent it out or use it or whatever they're going to do with it. They might own or finance it to someone else as long as they can pay for the debt that they owe me. I don't care. They just pay me my interest every month. Right. And this is one of the most passive forms of investing, interest income. So you'll see some commonalities here, right? With paying off consumer debt, that's debt-based, it's interest-based, it's passive. I don't have to work or do anything for that interest to come back to me or that payment to come back to me, right? With the gold loan, that's a passive form of investing. I don't have to do anything every month for that interest to show up. Okay, there's nobody that's going to call me because their toilet broke or any of that stuff, right? Same thing with the private lending is they're going to do all the work on the property, right? They're going to own it, manage it, live in it, rent it out, whatever they're going to do with it. And I'm not involved. They just pay me every month. Okay. Now with this is again, something we would do on phase 3. Phase 3 means that I am financially literate. Okay. I know the difference between currency and money. I earn more than I spend, right? I'm saving in real stores of value and not in currencies and speculations. I'm consumer debt free. I'm solvent. I'm properly protected. I'm not invested in any financial traps, Wall Street, chain banks, and the IRS. I'm out of all those systems. And I'm now freed up to take my capital and put it to work and start to earn income and invest with it. Right. So this is phase 3. And basically with this, like the minimum amount is usually about 50,000. Okay. So I need to have at least that available to invest. Right now, if I'm borrowing against an asset to do this, I have to consider my loan to value ratios. For example, if I'm borrowing against gold to be able to have 50,000 to then invest, I need to own about $70,000 worth of gold at a 75% loan to value ratio for me to actually have $50,000 liquid ready to roll. Right. So I've got to consider that. Okay. The other factor of this too is this is usually longer term. This is usually going to be 5+ years. Okay. Whereas we talked about like with a gold loan, some of these are 6 to 12 months. Like I'm in and out very quick, right? So there's a different commitment that goes with larger amounts of capital, right? So we said on a gold loan, this is about, on gold leasing, this is about 10 ounces. That's about 20 grand. Okay. So 20 grand, not a lot of money. Like it's no small amount, but it's a lot less than 50, right? A year or 2 years is a lot less than 5 years. So these are all things that, again, I have to consider. And the more financially literate that I am, the more financially educated that I am, the more comfortable I'm going to be with something like this, right? The less I have on financial literacy, the more scary it is to think about getting rid of $50,000 or not having access to it for 5 years. Okay. Now, again, this is not something you would go to your buddy down the road who's like, hey, I need a loan. I want to buy a house. I mean, you could do that. Usually that's how people lose money. You would go to a fund, an actual registered private placement fund that's got a good track record that does this, for at least 5 years, they're profitable. The group we love to work with, their 40-year track record, never not paid an investor. Like they're not guaranteed, nobody is, but for the last 40 years, they may as well have been, right? If the next 40 are like the last 40, we're doing pretty good. Okay. So this is private lending. This is one you guys know about. I've talked about all the time. Generally speaking, you're looking about an 8 to 12% annual return. Again, this is passive income. So you're not going to get rich on 2 deals, right? If you're doing these, you're stacking up, 5, 10, 15, 20 of these so that you have, because this is $500 a month, right? How much income do I need? If I need 5,000, okay, then I need 10 of these. Okay. If I need 10,000, I need 20 of these, right? And that's kind of the scale that you're thinking with. So this goes back to like when I'm investing is scaling something that already works. That's why I said it's like a franchise. You don't franchise a business that's broken. You franchise a business that's already a working operating system, and you can then scale it out. Okay. Franchising a broken financial system would be expecting to get wealthy off of one deal and then not reproducing the income and saving that income to then go to another one. And then again, doing that over and over. That's why we call this the triangle of wealth: earn, save, invest. Once I invest, guess what I got to go do? I've got to go back and earn actively enough money to put aside another 50,000 to do another deal. The more frequency and the more volume I can do this with, the faster I become financially independent, and it starts rotating in revolution. The revolution on this is something that's required. I can't do it twice and be like, I'm done, right? I'll have $1,000 a month. That can't even pay my rent. Okay. So this is the private lending. Now, the other side of this is number 5. This is owner finance. Very similar, but there's a distinct difference. Owner finance real estate. So private lending, it means, like I explained, we have money, we're giving money to a fund or an investor as a loan secured by whatever property they're going to buy. Okay. And then that's the relationship as they pay us interest. Owner finance real estate is where I actually physically own the asset. So I'm not loaning money to someone. I'm buying an asset. I'm buying a home, right? I'm buying a mobile home. I'm buying a thing, right? And that thing now is my asset, meaning I have the ownership of it. I'm on the title. I am responsible for the taxes, the utilities, the insurance, all of that stuff. Okay. So there's some cons to that. Like I've got some more expense. The upside is I get some of the benefits of ownership. Appreciation, I get that. If it goes up in value or price, I see that. Tax benefits, if I get to write off, accelerated depreciation against the property, I get that as well. Okay. Now, where this is similar is I own the asset, and then I'm finding Joe Sixpack, who probably can't qualify for a traditional mortgage, and I'm going to let him live in my building or my property, and he's going to pay me mortgage payments for the next 30 years. Okay. So that's where it's similar. I'm still earning usually about 8 to 12% interest. Okay. But I can also get tax deductions. I can get appreciation, right? And these are all things that I get in addition to. With the private lending, I'm just getting my interest. Okay. Now, if I do this with the sacred account concept of borrowing against life insurance, gold, or real estate in order to also then do this, okay, then I can also double up on the returns just the same. Okay. But the difference is, how involved do I want to be? How much risk do I want to take? How easily can I find a property? One of the things that I would say here: never pay retail. Okay. I know that's like a white girl cliche, never pay retail, but it's true. Do not go to a realtor on the MLS and say, I want to buy a single family home so that I can do owner finance. No. You buy wholesale. You find something that's not on the market. Okay, whether that's bank owned or a foreclosure or wholesale, literally wholesaling the real estate, working with someone on a contract, and you pay a wholesale price. Okay, retail means it's no different than a mutual fund. It's the soup of the day. Retail means none of the other real investors wanted it and they were willing to let it go to market because it wasn't something they wanted to touch. When you work with a realtor on the MLS on a home, like at the end of the day, it means that all the big boys didn't want the property. So when you look at BlackRock, right? For example, BlackRock is buying up tons of single family homes. They're not working with a realtor. They're buying them wholesale. They're buying them either wholesale or they're buying them in development projects. Okay. So Nano has a good question. Let me actually open this up for some questions really quick too. If you guys have questions, drop them in the feed really quick. We'll go live for another quick round. Nano, go ahead with your question.
Yeah, Jerry. So what about the idea that you quote unquote need a realtor to buy a home? They need somebody like the middleman in order to purchase whatever it is that you're trying to get.
Yeah, that's a good question. So on residential, that can definitely be true. There's more sentiment that goes into it, just like with buying a car. Like, you know, sometimes having a professional that understands that will be the case. You might still work private contract with the realtor to say, hey, help me with the legal paperwork, or hire a real estate attorney. But you're not like going to the car dealership to pick out the retail priced car that you're going to drive home. Because at the end of the day, you're not the end user. You make your money on the buy, right? So when I'm doing this strategy, my financial investment and my profitability depends on the fact that I can buy cheaper than most people can, and then I can rent or own or finance it out. So in this case, we're not renting, because the beauty of this, guys, and I hope that answers Nano's question, the beauty of this is I'm not a landlord. They break the toilet, they fix it, right? They ruin their plumbing, they fix it. The pipes freeze, they fix it. It's the relationship you have with your bank right now if you have a mortgage, except for you're the bank. They're you. So they are 100% self-reliant. You're not involved in any way other than, did you make the mortgage payment this month? Okay. And then if they didn't, then you're involved in the foreclosure process. So again, I wouldn't be doing this myself, because the amount of time that will go into finding a home and finding a person to live in the home and then managing that transaction and all of the legal with it, that's no longer passive. There's actually groups that do this. So on phase 4, this is another area that we can help with. We've got companies that do this. Okay. Vanessa says there's niche companies that sell only to investors. They're wholesale brokers for single family. Exactly. So there's people you would go to for this. And so basically when you're ready on phase 4, this is something that we have set up to be able to do. Okay. But again, this is like owning gold is one thing. Owning life insurance is one thing. Owning a piece of real estate is an entirely different thing. There's utilities, there's taxes, there's, liabilities that go with it. There's risks. There's all of this stuff that is with this investment. While it is more potentially profitable, while it does have more upside, it also has more downside. So I wouldn't just be like, oh, higher rate of return, let me jump into this one because of that. Yeah, I would look at the whole picture, and I would make sure that my financial understanding matches that picture. Okay. So this would be owner finance real estate. And again, this would be something on phase 4. And then the final one is actually called credit leasing. I've talked about this before. So credit leasing means I have credit cards. They're called credit lines in the sense, but that's a credit card, right? So I have credit lines. I have good credit. And I don't particularly need my credit, right? I don't rely on my personal credit anymore, meaning I don't have balances on my cards. I'm not trying to keep up with payments anymore. I might have business lines of credit where I've transitioned my life and my expenses over to that instead, right? So I have these open credit lines. In the credit industry, people will rent those from you to have it show up on their credit report as a positive line with a positive history, and it gives them an instant boost on their credit score. Okay. We have clients that do this during our credit repair program with CDX as they're getting ready for funding. Sometimes we'll say, hey, go do a credit lease, get 1 or 2 credit lines and keep them for the next 60, 90, whatever days. That's going to boost your score up instantaneously. Okay. Now, the beauty of this is when you lease your credit to somebody, they're only getting added as an authorized user. They don't get your credit card. They can't spend any of your money, and you don't even have to tell them who you are. Right. All they know is somebody added them, and that card now reports on their report. That's it. Okay. And so with this, they might be able to pay, they might be willing to pay anywhere from, $50 a month to, maybe a couple $100 a month for the ability to lease or rent a credit line from you. Okay. Now, again, they can't spend money. They can't charge your card, none of that stuff. Okay. All that happens is your good history, your payment, your line goes on their report. And then the credit bureaus see that and say, okay, Jerry has, you know, a $10,000 line with a 5-year reporting history. That's perfect. That's going to boost his score. That's a factor that adds. Okay. So this is great. And this is one that, again, like there's a market for this. There's places you would go for this. It's good to have a institutional setup with this for the same reason it's good to have an institutional setup for wholesale home purchasing or buying your gold wholesale or leasing to an institution, right? Rather than going to a buddy and saying, hey, let me add you as an authorized user. Okay. Because that can get weird fast, right? What if they don't pay you? What if they do know who you are because it's your buddy? What if they know information where they can access your card? There's different factors you want to think about with this. But if you do this right, guys, I love this one because it requires, other than getting your credit to the point where you could do this, it requires no capital. It's not like you have $100,000 you're putting into a credit card so that someone can use it. No, you just have a credit line. Didn't cost you anything other than, maybe paying for, funding or repair or education to be able to get to that point. But other than that factor, it's an infinite rate of return because it doesn't require you to put capital into it. Okay. So this is another one where it's like, you've got to get to this point. You've got to build up to this point. The biggest thing here is obviously having the good lines, but also not needing the credit. This is not something where you can add someone to your card and then be like, oh crap, something happened. I need to max my card out this month. And now all of a sudden on their credit report, they're showing a maxed out credit line or that you missed a payment. Like, cause now you're screwing them over. They paid for a service and you're not delivering the service. There's a contractual breach there. See, so it's very vital that I don't need the credit anymore. Whether that means that I have other lines and I just don't lease out the ones I use, or it means I'm on business credit or whatever different setup I might have, the ones that I lease, I don't personally use. They're done. Like it's just for leasing. Okay. So this is something that I look at as number 6. Now, all of this, what it has in common, if you look at this, is number 1, it pays income. Okay. And I'm not going to say passive because the first one I said was what? Invest in yourself. Okay. That one's not passive, right? All the other ones are very passive. This is the one that's not. And this is the one that you're going to be doing all the way through. Even once you're an accredited investor, you're still going to have to earn income. You're still going to have to exchange value with others. I'm not giving you a shortcut out of helping people. Okay. I'm not giving you a shortcut out of being valuable to mankind and exchanging. That's always going to be something you've got to do. Right. So that's not passive, but all these other ones, these are passive, right? But they at least all have a yield or an income that they produce. Okay. So that's a commonality. The other one that all of these have in common is they're very low risk. Okay. And I say that with a grain of salt. None of them are no risk other than paying off the debt, right? But they're very low risk. We're not speculating. We're not relying on price. We're not relying on market conditions. We're not relying on the economy. Guys, I personally, like with my investments, I can't tell you the last time I looked at what the stock market's doing. Why? Because I don't care. I'm not in it. When the economy tanked in 2020, I didn't bat an eyelash. It didn't matter to me. It didn't impact or affect anything that I'm doing with my investments. Right? So these are all insulated from a lot of the risks that other investments have, whether that's economic risks or market risks or interest rate risks or inflation or deflation or whatever, right? Like these are all things that no matter what, I've got the income coming in. Okay. And it's not going to fluctuate up and down. Okay. So that's another commonality. And then these ones are all like real things, right? Investing in myself. I'm a real thing. I'm a person. That's something I can see the investment. I know it's there, right? Paying off debt, like that's a real thing. That debt exists. I can log in, I can see it. I pay that payment every month. By getting rid of it, it's a tangible thing. Okay. And if it's not, try not making a car payment and see what happens. Gold, that's a real thing. I can hold it. I can touch it. It's there. I know for a fact, right? Same thing with private lending. Like I can go, and I have gone to the buildings that I'm the mortgage on. I can see them. I can go knock on the door and meet the people that live there. It might be kind of weird if they don't know you're the one that's investing in it, just like, who's this guy? But you could, right? Same thing with owner finance. That's my asset. I own that home and I know the person that lives there and they pay their mortgage payment. That's a real thing. Okay. Same thing with credit leasing. Like that's a real thing. It's a real credit card. I hold it in my hands and it's there. It's not an idea or some figment or social agreement. These are actual things we're investing in. Okay. So those are why I like these particular assets. And what I want to do here is I want to open this up for some questions. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and drop those in the comments. I like sharing these, but I almost also like, there's a little part of me that's like, man, like I don't want people to put the carriage before the horse. These are exciting videos to watch. It's awesome to learn about investing. It's very cool to get involved. It's not fun when you get involved prematurely. It's not fun when you do it out of sequence. It's not fun when you rush with haste into the wrong deal with the wrong people and you lose money because of it. Okay. So there's a time to do this. There's a place to do this. There's a way to do this. There's an exact method. There's an exact amount. Everything is down to the T. It's a recipe. So follow the recipe. And this doesn't mean that we never get there. This doesn't mean that, this isn't real. It means that get the thing done you're working on now before you add the next thing. And if you keep doing your finances in that approach with that, it's what a blueprint is, you end up with the end result. So let me open this up for some questions. Let me pop Facebook up really quick and just see if we have any questions in the comments on Facebook. Again, if you're on Facebook, I can't go live with you for questions, but I can just answer them in the comments old school. By the way, if this was helpful for you, share the screen, share the stream and get this out there. Good to see everybody. Sean says that beard though. I grew it myself. Thank you. Justin asked, what blueprint step would gold leasing be in? Again, that would be in like the latter half of phase 2 into phase 3, depending on, and we kind of answered this earlier, depending on what's happening with your target amount with gold and whether or not you're doing the HELOC. Sean says, I'm interested in learning more about credit leasing. That's awesome. Credit leasing, by the way, this one happens on phase 4. I forgot to clarify this. This one happens on phase 4. And the reason being is on phase 4, at that point, you really don't need credit anymore. You're saving 40% of your income. We start then getting you with involved with business credit lines, which are not impacted by your personal social security number. So you can move your life over to business credit, and then that leaves your personal lines open and available. So that's kind of when we do that and why. All right, so let's see if we have any questions on Zoom here. I don't see any questions here. I do see a question. This is an anonymous attendee. He's talking about life insurance. So this person says, my policy has a guaranteed interest rate of 4% and a dividend rate of 2%. How does this keep up with inflation? That is a good question. So, and I've said this before, your life insurance policy is a store of value. Its job is not to beat inflation. Its job is to store your value, right? So you're putting it in somewhere that number one is not going to lose money. Number 2, it's always going to gain. The thing that beats inflation is you. You out earn inflation, and you do that by earning more income greater than the rate of inflation, right? Saving more of that income greater than the rate of inflation, and then investing that income. The rate of return does not need to always be increasing with inflation. The volume of the money that you're putting into it does. Okay. And this is so critical. People misunderstand this. Inflation, and then they use that as an excuse to speculate. That's why I got to buy Bitcoin. That's why I got to buy meme stocks. That's why I got to buy tech stocks. That's why I got to buy NFTs. No, you need to increase your income. You need to go freaking earn more money. That's the way you beat inflation. That's the way you always have. Guess what? The inflation is caused because the Federal Reserve creates more income. You need to do the same thing. You can't blame it on your life insurance or gold or hope that Bitcoin's going to fix that. You actually have to go exchange with other people, increase your income at a rate that's greater than inflation, save that, and then put that into a deal that is not going to lose money, and it's going to pay you a scalable rate of return. Okay, guys, I've got news for you. Inflation's been around forever. Okay, it's not a new problem. People have been dealing with it for hundreds of years. Okay, never once has it been like, oh no, we need to scrap everything we knew about investing because of inflation. No, the wealthy have always done the things I'm telling you about tonight. Guess what? Last year, banks bought more life insurance than they ever have. Okay, they're not like, oh no, inflation. They're like, we need to double down on the thing that's worked. Okay, now the question is, have you worked? Because if you haven't worked, there's nothing else that's going to fix that for you. You've got to do that yourself. And I know that's a harsh reality, but and I don't mean to be mean with that. That's the truth. Okay, that's the real truth of the matter. And I would be doing a disservice to anybody that I did not share that truth with. Let's see. We have a question from Crystal. Let me bring Crystal on really quick. All right, we're live with Crystal. How are you tonight, Crystal? Oh, I think Crystal might not have a microphone. Let me see if Crystal is able to mic up or not. Okay, Crystal may not have a mic. Let me just read her question. Crystal asks, any particular recommendations on how to establish your business credit? So that's something we do specifically on phase 4. So we have a way that we go about that. There's an actual method. There's a group that we work with that brokers that professionally. The biggest thing is with credit, you've got to realize it's another triangle, ironically. You're either borrowing off of income, collateral, or credit. Okay, and we could even make this the 3 C's. We could say cash flow, in case they want to see positive income, cash flow, collateral, or credit. So when we're getting into a business, you have to realize if it's a new business, let's say we set up a new LLC to be able to get business credit, it does not have established credit yet. Okay, so we can't really go to them like we could with our own personal credit. It's kind of like being 18 years old, never had a credit card before, and they're always like, well, you don't have bad credit, you just have no credit. And you're like, it may as well be bad. You guys aren't going to loan me money, right? So you got to look at, okay, well, does the business have cash flow? And this is again where we can start to use the passive income that we're generating from investing to report that to an entity, to an LLC or to an S corporation, so that you can say, yeah, it does. I can show you, certified accounting statements that show profitability for the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and then they'll lend based on cash flow. Or you can say the business owns assets. It owns gold, it owns real estate, it owns life insurance. I would like to get loans against those things. Okay, and then we can start to use these to establish the credit. And then as we make payments, we've now started to build up this credit report. So then later we could go and say, hey, we probably do have cash flow and collateral, but we don't want to use these anymore. We just want to rely on the credit worthiness of the business based on the history of payments and things that we've built up over time. So that's how we would kind of set that up. But that's something we do on phase 4. Nano says that's where the 40% imposed savings tax on themselves. That's why the 1% save 40% of their gross income. That's true. They're doing that to beat inflation. And that's also why they increase it. There's 2 graphs I can show you. One of them shows the top 1%'s income over the same 100-year period from 1913 till now. And it freaking skyrockets year after year after year after year after year. It goes up. Okay. And the discrepancy, this disparity between that level of income and the average or median income is just not even the same thing. Like there definitely is like a wealth disparity. We can't blame it on factors that aren't things we can control, but it's there. And we can all go earn more income. As they increase their income, they save 40%. And that's how they beat inflation. So they're not speculating to try and beat inflation. They're not trying to get higher rates of return, because you have to realize return is analogous with risk. As I increase my return, my risk goes up, right? So when I'm storing my value, I don't want risk. Okay, I don't want risk any more than I would want a garage that might fall on the car that I park inside of it, right? I don't want that there. I want to know that car or that thing that I'm storing is safe. Above all things, it's safe. It's never going to be lost. Okay, and that's the number one thing. Let me see if we have any other questions here. I think that might cover all of them. I hope we answered everything tonight. Thank you guys all for tuning in, by the way. If you don't have any other questions, which I don't think we do, what I will do here is I'm going to wrap up. Number one, if you're watching this and you have not gotten a copy of my book, you can go to jerryfetta.com/B2F and get a copy of my book, Blueprints to Financial Freedom. This is going to give you the exact steps from ground zero of like, I don't know anything about money, to being able to get involved in some of the stuff we're talking about tonight, to then being an accredited investor, meaning you have $1 million net worth, to achieving financial independence and beyond, step by step by step. Okay. And this is based on the top 1% of wealth, what they've actually done. So again, that's jerryfetta.com/B2F. That's the letter B, the number 2, the letter F. Justin says, great book. It is. Thank you. And then secondly, we do these every Friday. So if you want to tune back in, for sure, be our guest. We'll be back again Friday next week, 10 p.m. Eastern time. And other than that, guys, I'm going to tune out here. Have a great weekend. I'll talk to you all next time.